Hello there and welcome to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Later we'll be joined by Abby Barmore as lots to get to. We have a new volleyball coach that will be announced this week, and Danny Busby Kelly. Lots of kind of things to clean up with coaching staff and roster. And that's where I want to start. I want to start on the coaching staff here, guys, in our opening headlines segment. Nebraska completed really its hiring cycle here with the hiring of Mike Eckler as the special teams coordinator. And as you really zone in on this, I think it's very notable just the amount of change that we've seen with this coaching staff. And I used the analogy on Sipple's show earlier. It was almost like Matt Rule went in and wiped out his entire management team, and he brought in a whole new set of managers.
There it is.
You go through this list: Dana Holgerson, now your OC; John Butler, now your DC; Mike Eckler, now your special teams coordinator. So you have three new managers, along with Phil Snow, who kind of assumes kind of a leadership role. And Matt Rule tipped his hand on that in the sense that Phil Snow had been conducting the interviews for Matt Rule with some of these special teams coordinator hires. It's very interesting when you zone in on the amount of movement we've seen in Lincoln really since November.
In a sense, I think it takes some, I don't want to say pressure, but it takes somewhat of a load off of the head coach when you have a head coach, a 13-year former head coach in Dana Holgerson, a 53-year-old in Mike Eckler, who's been a coordinator at multiple spots, and even John Butler, who has all that NFL experience. By the way, those coordinator resumes are really strong.
Mm-hmm.
Each of those three, Nebraska has three. I want to say three big-time coordinators. Someone asked me, how's this staff? Or no, it was on our chat, our live chat. Someone said, how's this? I think it was our live chat. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know what the hell it was. But somebody said, how's it stack up to other staffs?
That was a chat.
In the Big Ten? I have no idea. I mean, we don't study the other staffs enough.
That's hard
probably.
To answer. It's
hard to answer. But I have to think this is, if you just start with the coordinators, not many teams would have three coordinators with these sorts of resumes.
Yeah,
right.
The question was asked, like, would it be top 5 in the Big Ten? And again, that's impossible to answer because we just don't know enough. But I mean, I'd be willing to put the resumes of this coaching staff up against most anyone in the conference. I mean, you mentioned the coordinators, but how about Addison Williams? I mean, that was a guy that was an associate head coach or at Central Florida. So, I mean, you're talking about guys that have been there and done it. And then not just from their coaching pedigree, but you have some elite level recruiters now. Phil Simpson on there. You got, Dakeil Shorts as your receivers coach. And so you've got a mix of well-seasoned guys that have done it at the highest level, both at the college and NFL ranks, while also bringing in elite level recruiters that can go and get you dudes. And that is the ideal makeup. And you have guys with NFL experience. Like I say, hey, I'm Terry Bredin, and I just went and coached a team to the Super Bowl. Look what I did with Chris Jones. Hey, want to come play for this? Mm-hmm. Like, these are things that you can sell with this staff that not a lot of other schools, even in the Big Ten, can match.
Or better yet, you could be like, John Blake would do this sometimes. Let me call Leon Lett. And John Blake would get Leon Lett on the phone, or, a former Cowboy great, Deion Sanders or whoever, to talk to a recruit. And I'm sure Terry Bradden will have a lot of those connections. But yeah, you just think of some of the upgrades. When you go back to the staff Matt Rule hired with very limited time to make the hiring, you hire Bob Wager from the high school ranks. Garrett McGuire had never had a coaching position like this before. For Evan Cooper, he had experience, but not to the level of John Butler, who coached the secondary this year, and not to the level now of Addison Williams. So I just think across the board, the depth of the staff, particularly at the management level now, the coordinator leadership level, and I throw Phil Snow in that group too, is far superior than what it was when Matt Rule first got here.
Yeah, it looks like it. It definitely looks like it. I mean, I think the conversation always is going to start with Holgerson because of he has such an extensive resume, and he's a big name. Mm-hmm. It's still sometimes it's sort of wild to me. It hasn't it took so long for it to fully set in with me that Dana Holgerson is Nebraska's OC. That's a national name, This is also an interesting discussion from the standpoint of there's been so much change because now you have the transfer portal and there's 16 new players. Sean wrote that he thinks 9 of them
a conservative guess.
Conservative guess that 9 of them would be in the starting lineup. 9 new starters, and then this huge change, massive overhaul in the coaching staff. It's a massive overhaul. I don't even know that it's all settled in people's minds yet, which is where we come in. We can help with that.
And Robin, I go back, the alarm bells for me, I'm sure that went off in there were the UCLA game. When they lost that game, when they were staring at back-to-back no bowl games, when they started the year off 5-1, that was a huge, I mean, they were looking at a 6-game losing streak potentially. And I felt like that's when the changes began as far as some of the coaching stuff moving with Holgorsen. And, you know, this program could not afford not to go to a bowl game. And the Holgorsen move, to Matt Rule's credit, helped get them to a bowl game and play at their best level we had seen all year, arguably against Wisconsin.
You think it was UCLA, Rob?
Yeah. I mean, just because, like Sean said, that was kind of like what looked to be a tipping point there. It was like, oh no, here we go again type thing. Like that was the game Nebraska was supposed to win at home, and they got dominated. And it was a really bad vibe around the program. And so it was kind of a back against the wall type situation where I think Matt Rule had to do something.
Could you argue that it was, I know what you're going to say. I'm going to say, well, then Ohio State happened, but 56-7 you don't think
still
that
early
set off alarm bells?
Yeah, but the Ohio State game the next week
gave you some renewed
hope. They had a 17-14 lead in the fourth quarter with like 5 minutes left.
And they're on the road underdogs against what was even a top 20 Indiana team.
And what was Rule's posture like after that game? I mean, he was very
careful.
Well, no, I thought he was very kind of really upbeat. Like this is what I've been preaching. So yeah, you're probably, I'm not saying you're wrong about UCLA. I'm just trying to think, is there any way you're wrong? Would it have been before?
Well, they went into a bye game after UCLA, bye week.
Right.
And I felt like that bye week, that's when Phil Snow showed up to Lincoln. That's when all of a sudden Holgorsen showed up to Lincoln.
Yeah. And so one thing I want to give Matt Rule credit for is a lot of times you see coaches like unwilling to make those types of decisions, especially in season. And at a moment like that, like I said, it was a tipping point type scenario for that season. And he made a massive move, went and got a guy that had just as big of a name as he does in the coaching world.
Holgorsen?
And brought him in and said, hey, guess what? We need your help. I need you to come help this. And then in the offseason, he made some difficult decisions. He fired friends. You know, he parted ways with guys that he was really close to. Yep. And that's not easy for anybody, especially in the coaching world where so much of your relationships are built around trust. And so for him to go out of his box and get guys he doesn't even know that well, like and just because he saw them as upgrades that were going to help Nebraska's program get to where he needs to go. You know, I think that says a lot. You know, you can say what you want about the first round of hires. He was up against the clock, and I think he went with guys that he knew and quickly learned that, you know, it's not about necessarily who you know, but what you know.
Here's the deal. I say it every time, but nobody listens. They don't. You're not chasing you are chasing like some like Minnesota right now, I guess. But the teams you're chasing are absolute monsters.
There's no divisions anymore, so you can't really chase the Minnesota.
I hated the division. I hated it from this standpoint. Oh, Sip, come on, man. We just got to beat Iowa and Wisconsin. No. I guess you do. You do if you're taking baby steps, but you're chasing Oregon and Penn State and Ohio State, and FanDuel set their win totals at 10.5, 10.5, and 10.5. Nobody in the SEC has a 10.5. You have to, and I think Rule maybe it hit him like I'm in a bear of a league. I can't do this with just friends. I got to go get some people, hire guns. I got to go get some guns.
Here's an analogy. You like my analogies. It's like a movie where to be a great movie, you need multiple star actors. You can't just have like Ocean's 11 with just George Clooney, who we'll call Matt Rule, would not work. You needed Matt Damon. You needed Brad Pitt.
There's only so many castaways.
Like you need other good high level people to make it work. And
if you want a blockbuster,
and I think
if you want to block
Matt Rule alone, because look, Garrett McGuire, Bob Wager, that initial, like those weren't moving. That wasn't moving the needle.
There wasn't anybody except for Tony White, probably, right? Am I wrong?
And he was making 700,000 or 8. I mean, he wasn't even making $1 million when they brought him in here. It wasn't like, I mean, Tony White was a big hire, but in the context of what big hires are in the Big Ten,
no, he's not. He wasn't. I get what you're saying.
I mean, Chip Kelly just
Yeah.
left Ohio State for $6 million.
NFL coaches being coordinators.
Yeah, and they went and got Jim Knowles. Now Penn State, the other monster, took Jim Knowles.
Yeah, how about that?
After the monster won a national championship,
Mhm.
they went and got Jim Knowles.
Yep.
One, Terrence Knighton was a rookie hire. Never had been a coach. It worked out well, though. He was a good hire.
And those guys, I'm not disparaging them as coaches. It's just there's context in the conversation. It's what you're chasing.
Yeah,
And
Big Ten's a different beast.
Yeah, and you can't unless you just want to settle in and say we're Minnesota, and we'll be happy to get 8 wins. Or when you're in that damn division, that if we can just win the division, we get a shot at the monster.
The
That's what you want to be. I
the
mean,
AL Central of college football. That's
yeah,
what it was.
Jake Sorensen and I used to argue. We used to get in heated arguments about that, where he would say, "Well, they just got to beat Wisconsin, Iowa." And I'd be like, "Okay, so you're just settling for that then?"
Because maybe the Kansas City Royals can beat the Yankees.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
Like once out of 20 times.
Right. Yeah, you want to be the Yankees. And so I think you guys would agree that Nebraska's positioned in this new world to be the Yankees. I think they are. I don't know. Maybe you guys don't. I think that they can be Penn State. There's no reason Nebraska can't be that, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. I think they've settled into a mindset around here, though, of no, he's got to be the Royals. It can't be that way. I think fans have. I don't think Matt Rule settled.
I don't think all fans have. I think there's plenty others that are right in line with you.
Yeah, I hope so.
That this is not just we want to go to bowl games and be competitive. We want to compete for championships.
Right.
And these moves that we've seen since the UCLA game last year are steps towards that type of progress.
Eckler's a big step in that direction. Eckler's that step.
And you can't coach here just to appease the former players, to appease the local high school coaches. People have tried to do too much of that, and it hasn't worked for anybody. Don't worry about what the high school coaches and the former players say. We're beyond that era now. Like, worry about now and how to win in this new game that we call college football, where players make over $1 million.
Michigan's coming in here. I mean, Michigan's coming. You don't want it to happen
with Bryce Underwood.
Do you want it to look like it did last year? I mean, or the last time they came in here? Is that what you want?
Well, they knew the play.
Yeah, hopefully you don't have that edge.
Don't do that.
All right. Well, hey,
really? You think that's why they won the game? Really?
Will your brother come back for that game?
I don't know.
That was the. I still believe that was the premise of the Sunday practice was Simple's rant about his brother.
And now we're saying Michigan won because they knew the plays. Okay, that's why.
All right.
They weren't better.
Triggered.
We'll have more to come here.
Triggered.
I want to hear on what Matt Rule had to say. Some other things from Saturday. You're listening here to the HuskerOnline Show. We're back here on the HuskerOnline Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washad, and before we get in to some other topics here from Matt Rule, this segment of the HuskerOnline Show brought to you by Omaha Steaks. And look, when you are throwing the party for the big game this weekend,
big game,
you can't. I want to be careful. I don't want to get sued here.
That's right.
The big game.
Oh,
you can't call it by the other thing.
Good God.
I know it's ridiculous. But anyway, nothing better than Omaha Steaks. And they have everything you can imagine, not just steaks, burgers, hot dogs, chicken, seafood items, desserts, sides, you name it. And tons of great different discounted packages that you can get here on omahasteaks.com. And you can kind of customize the one you want. You can go some of the pre-made ones they have together. Personally, big fan of the filet mignon burgers. Also a big fan of just their fillets in general. I mean, you cannot beat an Omaha Steaks bacon wrap filet or regular filet. They even have the Omaha cut, which is a version of a ribeye cut like a filet mignon.
If I was Sean's agent, I would push hard for him to be the national spokesman for Omaha Steaks.
I get hungry every time he does this.
Yeah, but Sean was put on earth to do this ad.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
But anyway, get on there, put your order in, and just because Steve Sipple likes you, he's going to give you $20 more off. You have to use the promo code.
Even if I don't like you, I'll do that.
We're going to give you the promo code HuskerOnline. And look,
chances are
our last promo code, I think, got so many uses. They figured out, I think it got like shared on like other things.
Really?
But a lot of people use these promo codes. So we have a new promo code, HuskerOnline. Let's show them again that the HuskerOnline show, like steaks, go to omahasteaks.com, put your order and do it for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, Valentine's Day's coming up. This strikes me as a good gift.
Send your mom, get your mom a send her a box of steaks.
My mom.
Your mom would be like, "Oh my gosh, Steve."
I think she would. I mean, yeah. I don't know if she'd say that.
Just like that.
Well, then don't send her hot dog. You got to get her something
I'm not
nice.
sending hot dogs.
You send your mom hot dogs.
I've never sent my mom hot dogs.
Okay, good.
Happy Valentine's Day. Enjoy these hot dogs.
You go get the buns.
All right. HuskerOnline's the promo code. Okay. Before we get into Matt Rule, so Robin figured out, I joked that George Clooney would play Matt Rule in the movie. Actually, Robin's got the real character. Who is the character, Robin?
So if I'm casting this biopic of Matt Rule, I'm going with Mark Ruffalo.
Nailed it.
And Megan, if you have a picture of him, you can pop him up there. If not, there he is.
Oh my God.
Matt Rule.
There's Matt Rule.
Put him in a Husker pullover and you got yourself Nebraska's head football coach.
Robin, the casting director, Robin.
I think Rule would probably still prefer Clooney to play him.
Well,
I would. I mean, it'd be quite a coup. I mean, it's like in the Blind Side movie, the real dad. They had Tim McGraw play him, and he looked nothing like Tim McGraw. And the dad's like, "Yeah, I loved having Tim McGraw play my role in the movie."
That'd be great.
Sandra Bullock. I mean, you have to have it like realistic, right? Yes. Anyway, perfect.
All right. Well, I want to get back into.
Look at Ruffalo. What was he in?
I mean, he's been in a bunch of stuff. Hulk.
Oh, he was the Hulk.
Yeah, so he's in all the Avengers, X-Men, not X-Men, Hulk.
We already know who played
Marvel.
Robin's role.
Who?
The guy from Superbad.
Not even anymore. When I had my hair cut differently, he's talking about what's his name? The skinny kid from
And the guy from
Superbad.
Social Network.
Oh, I can't think of his name.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's Robin's
Don't have it.
movie. I don't have one.
Well, let's move
There's only one of me.
before we get in trouble.
But all right, let's get into Matt Rule. We heard from him Saturday. A lot of things. One thing that really jumped out to me as he builds this roster, builds this team, is the 57-man roster. They can have 105 players, but there's very much an NFL mindset of how you build this thing, with starting with your top 57. And my interpretation is, if you're in that 57, you are the guys that are going to get a bigger piece, if not the biggest piece, of the rev share dollars. And I think as you recruit now high school players, that's the challenge you have to do. Is like, all right, what high school guy are we going to bring in that could be in the 57? Which guys maybe aren't in the 57 that could get into that number? And that is the new recruiting we're working with now.
Now the natural question is, would we ever get that 57? The media, would he ever put out a depth chart that would?
Well,
say,
I think the real depth chart itself is probably pretty close to the 57.
Okay, that's probably the answer. You could probably determine it.
He said 3 quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. Which is, yeah,
I'd imagine it's 3 running backs.
This is where the NFL model and his NFL rules, NFL experience really comes in handy when he starts to talk about this sort of stuff. I mean, it's clear that he's using it. Well, he says this is the way it's done in the NFL, with some tweaks.
And how you pay guys is almost like how you've done in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that background really helps.
You prioritize certain positions that are valued: quarterback, edge rusher, tackle.
Yeah.
I mean, those positions are going to make a lot of money.
Yep.
And then, players like Dane Key, you sign as a priority free agent. Look, Dane Key right now, if he had 800 and some yards receiving this year, his total stat number would be the most receiving yards ever at Nebraska.
Total stat.
Like right now,
Right.
he comes in like 6th or 7th all time at Nebraska. If you just took what he did at Kentucky.
Big time receiver. I mean, it would be a shocking development if he wasn't in the starting lineup. Right?
No.
Brought him in to be probably your number one target.
He's got almost 2,000 career yards receiving.
Number one target. So yeah, the 57, and then there's a second group, a second 57.
second 53.
50.
But the bottom 10, I think, is where there's going to be a lot more flexibility. Like you are going to have a Roman Mangini in there.
Mm-hmm. He said Roman Mangini will make the roster.
Like players that might surprise the fan base because they're not necessarily big name guys, but there are culture guys that you want in there.
Yeah, Roman Mangini. I have very limited familiarity with Roman Mangini, except Rule mentions him. If he has 5 press conferences, he'll mention him in 2 of them.
Mm-hmm. And if you notice, like those pregame scrums where Rule will like just pick guys out, he always picks Roman Mangini.
Sean, what do you know about Roman Mangini?
Just a tough walk-on wide receiver. I
From
mean,
Desert Ridge High School in Mesa, Arizona.
does his job. They like his attitude. And look, you have to find quality walk-ons in this program. And I think there are plenty. And that will be the challenge. Like, how do you manage this roster to make sure you have about 10 of those players every year still?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, they unfortunately have to be more than just culture guys. Like, they got to be able to help you if you're carrying them on your roster. And Roman Mangini played a lot of special teams. And so, that's got to be the balance of finding guys that make your team better, that make your practices better, but they can also help you on game day, because you just can't carry extra weight anymore with this 105 model.
Yeah, and it's interesting. How much extra weight was there? How many guys were around that really couldn't compete?
I think you would take more walk-on freshman players than you normally would, because you could get away with it. Now there aren't any walk-on freshmen this year. None. And they had to turn away on some pretty good kids. Like, I'll give you one, Ike Ackerman at Omaha Central. Our people at On3 love him. In fact, I didn't know this, but they rank him as a 4-star, and he's going to Ohio, but he's a 6'4", 240-pound edge defensive end player, multiple state champion in the shot put and discus, a 6'4" high jumper, led the state of Nebraska in Class A in quarterback sacks, and he's a great basketball player at Omaha Central.
Can't help Nebraska.
And they didn't have a spot for a guy like this. Well, I talked to one of our ratings guys this morning about this, because I'm like, hey, I wanted to verify, like, this wasn't like done by mistake. They rated him as a 4-star, and they said, we're floored that teams do not evaluate senior years anymore. This is a 6'4" high jumper, a state champion discus shot put thrower, led Nebraska in sacks. And he's a starter,
Nebraska,
and he's a starter on a great basketball team.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so a guy like this didn't get to go to Nebraska.
Was he getting Power 5 offer? Power 4
None.
offers?
He had North Dakota State, Kent State, Northwest Missouri State. He had some of those offers, but then Ohio came in on him late because they had a coaching change.
Jeez.
But
do you think this is going to be the new model in a lot of cases, where you got a guy that's like would be good enough to be a developmental piece on a previous unlimited roster number, but now he kind of has to go the stepping stone route to Ohio, and then maybe
like basketball,
in a year or two.
Robin.
Yeah, it's been that way in basketball for a while, but now I think you're starting to see that become more and more prevalent in football as well with these roster
where you go take him from Ohio.
Yeah.
And I saw him actually play basketball, Robin, that Anderson kid from Pius, that's in North Dakota State.
Yeah, Trace
Anderson. He locked him up in the district finals. I mean, just manhandled him with his physicality and athletic ability.
Big kid.
So On3's thought is like, hey, this is a guy that we'll look smart at, because if he has a year or two at Ohio, he'll be making $1 million somewhere.
Because he's an edge guy.
Yep.
He's a defensive lineman edge, yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, how many guys at his size at 6'4", 230 do you know that high jump 6'4"?
Virtually none. I mean, that's an elite athlete.
Yeah.
That's an elite
But
athlete.
the issue with recruiting now, I think we deal with, is you have to select so early. Like, you're almost
early junior.
you have to look at the junior year, but the sophomore year. And if you don't get identified then, it's hard.
Wow.
And how many you guys played high school sports? How many guys do you know that made massive jumps from their junior to senior? A lot.
Most of them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it usually is in life.
Right. I mean, guys that get offered as sophomores or start. Yeah. I mean, it's changed so much. I don't even know what to say. The other thing that Rule talked about, it was interesting in the press conference on Saturday, his press conference. He wasn't asked about Dana Holgerson or any Dana Holgerson related questions at all. It was the last or second to last question in a 31-minute press conference when he finally was asked about Dylan Raiola. And I was going to. Reporter Sam from the World Herald, he asked it. I was going to ask the question, and then Sam did. And Matt had a very sort of an interesting answer about Raiola. The question was how much growth is needed before Raiola makes it his team. And Rule had a great answer. He said before he can make it his team, I think he has to make it his offense. Before he makes it his offense, I think he has to make it his receiving core. So what that means is he's got to get those guys, those receivers going in these, in throwing sessions, off-season throwing sessions. and get them all there. Rule had that quote again. I mean, it's very interesting what he said. He said Dylan has to get the receivers there every day. Year one, I'd asked him about workouts, and 5 receivers showed up. Rule said that's not leadership. That's trying to be a leader. Leadership is when you get everybody there, and I think he'll do a great job with that.
And what did we see on Saturday?
What'd you see, Sean?
90 guys working out on Saturday, where the last 2 years they didn't have that luxury.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Sims at this time 2 years ago did not have the clout to organize that.
No, not really.
A year ago, Heiner Carberg wasn't really it was kind of hard to say he was the starting quarterback.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And Dylan was a freshman who hadn't done anything.
And then Dylan came in December.
Mm-hmm.
And Dylan wanted, I think it was maybe a little frustrating time because he wanted to get everybody together. But these are early morning workouts. And not all those receivers just say, okay, I'm ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
No, you get resistance.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Rule's saying. When you get resistance, you still got to make it work. That's being a leader because you're going to get resistance. Not every kid's going to want to get up at 7 o'clock. Some are going to text you, say, nah, they'll give you the NAH or whatever. Well, you got to get them there.
NAH.
You know what you've seen? I've seen the grandkids do that. Nah,
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
Nah.
When we come back, Abby Barmore will join the show. We're going to have Abby on for the next 2 segments for the mailbag, but we want to hit on Danny Busboom Kelly as it's a big week for volleyball. We'll have Abby join us next. You're listening here to the HuskerOnline Show. And we're back here on the HuskerOnline Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washed, Abby Barmore, and we're going to hit some volleyball. But before we do that, this segment brought to you by Public Rec. And if you're not familiar with Public Rec, it is premium leisure wear, not just for out and about and around to be comfortable, but for work too. I mean, they've got great different pants, styles of pants. You can slip those on and they look like dress pants, but they're much, much more comfortable with the different styles and looks. Lots of great colors. It's simple. It's clean. Very basic looking colors, but high level, high quality stuff at Public Rec. I've got a couple of their items and it is high end, great stuff. And, try it out online, look at the different things. We're going to give you 20% off Public Rec. If you've never tried it before on your order, use the promo code Husker or go to publicrec.com/Husker and you'll get 20% off with that promo code Husker. Thank you again to Public Rec for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. But Abby Barmore, it's been a big week for Nebraska women's athletics.
Wow.
Particularly with volleyball. Danny Busboom Kelly is back. The Cortland native who played her high school ball at Adams Freeman High School just south of Lincoln makes her homecoming. And I joked, it's almost like another version of Scott Frost, but for volleyball, a star former player that was a national champion, earned it with another job. She's coming back, very successful head coach, and we'll get a chance to see her on Thursday. And I'm anticipating, Abby, a huge crowd at the Devaney Center.
Yeah, me too. I think it'll be a great crowd. People are really fired up to have Danny back. She's a great coach, and like you mentioned, she's really accomplished. And hopefully Husker fans are hoping this works out a little bit better than Scott Frost's tenure.
Well, the Big Ten
The bar might be kind of low, though.
Will the Big Ten have to adjust the DBK?
Yeah, just come out swinging right out of the gate. Danny.
And so what are you expecting as a crowd? You're expecting what? How big of a crowd? This is Wednesday, by the way. The event is Thursday.
Yeah, so it's
4,000 plus. 4,000.
What do you think, Abby?
I think that there'll be a lot. I mean, it's 2 p.m. on a Thursday, so that is probably going to impact it. But I wouldn't be. I'm never surprised when it's hard for me to know like what the sections are because a lot of it's blocked off with the stage. So like the end where they run out of the tunnel walk, that's where the stage is going to be. So at least like a third of it might be blocked off.
Okay.
But there could be over 5,000 people maybe.
They will.
There's a number.
Well, her hometown of Adams Freeman High School in elementary schools, they're having buses come up from Adams Freeman with all the school children. I know that. So that will be a story in itself. Just the amount of people that come up from surrounding. Because look, Nebraska volleyball, as we know, don't underestimate what they can do. I mean, they have a world record.
I bet you DBK is ready for this. This is kind of a big deal for a head coach. She's setting a tone for the program. I mean, for the state in a way. People are going to be, God, it's a hard job. Being a head coach is not easy. You have to be on. She has to be on. And then there's a press conference after that. She can calm down. But boy, in front of a big crowd, they're going to be expecting I bet she just doesn't get up there and wing it, is what I'm saying.
Fair not.
No way.
This job's different. I mean, the fact that who she's succeeding, I mean, the most legendary coach in volleyball history.
Yes.
Like,
just
no
that.
pressure. So, I mean, I agree that she needs to come out and set the tone and make this her program now. And
It's interesting.
You got to obviously give all the props in the world to John Cook, but now it's her turn, and it's her turn to take the reins of the most prominent college volleyball program in the country.
Abby, now besides hiring one more assistant coach, because there's a third position open on the staff, what are the roster needs? Is there any portal things to watch, recruiting things for specifically 2025? And then I do know John Cook broke some more news on the schedule that Nebraska volleyball is going to be playing Kentucky and in Nashville, I believe.
Yeah, so with the roster, I think they're pretty much set. John Cook, and before he left, he added an opposite hitter from Baylor, Ali Shazek. So their roster is pretty much set. As of now, no one has left. I mean, they get 30 days after your head coach leaves, and no one's entered the portal yet. It does open again in May, so maybe if after they stick it out for a while, they decide Danny's not for them, they could leave, but I would be surprised to see anyone enter the portal.
Okay.
DBK, she's a great coach and her players love her. And John mentioned that in his press conference, but that is something that I noticed way before he even said anything about it. I've been around like a few of her like press conferences in Louisville for like the Final Four and regionals and stuff like that. And her players just talk so highly of her. I remember maybe last year, the year before, one of them was like, I probably shouldn't say this, but Danny's a badass. Like
I'm not surprised.
They love her and she is fun and
she's an alpha.
Yeah, they really like her. She's super competitive. I mean, she's a great coach. She was a great player. And I think that goes a long way too, when you're a head coach and you could say, I won as a player and I won as an assistant coach. And I've been really close to winning as a head coach. And I guess with more tools here, right, more resources, maybe she could get it done.
This really dawned on me. The three I would call major women's sports coaches now at Nebraska: Rhonda Revelle, softball; Danny Butzbaum Kelly; and then Amy Williams with basketball. All were former Husker athletes.
Good point.
So the three key women's sports are now led by three women who played at Nebraska.
Great point. Amy was a kind of a like a walk-on point guard type, but she played. And I don't remember. I mean, Rhonda played a long time ago, about when I was in school almost. So I'm
not that old.
Yeah. I mean, I covered Rhonda.
Rhonda played at Nebraska 81 to 83,
and I went to school in 85. So yeah, I just missed her. But I covered her when she was early in her coaching career.
93 was her first year at Nebraska.
Yeah, I covered softball back then.
I wanted to mention that on their staffs, they had a lot of former Huskers too, like Kelly Hunter, for example. Softball, they have a ton of like their assistants, grad managers. So there's a lot of Husker alumni, and especially for volleyball, they know how important this is and how much the pressure is. And I know that Danny feels that, but also like it's not many people get to feel the pressure like they do at Nebraska volleyball. Like the standard's high, it's national championship or bust. Wow. But also with that being said, like this is her first year in a new program. There's going to be growing pains, right? Like it's just going to be very different not to have John Cook. So maybe a little patience and understanding might be required these first couple of years, but I still expect her to win a lot of games and make a splash in the Big Ten.
Well, and she's going to manage rev share dollars, which John Cook never had to do. I mean, all the NIL before was collective dollars. And you add that in, we talked to Bill Moose about this a couple of weeks ago. He left a month before NIL. He never had to deal with it. But now rev share, whole different thing. Actually, Nebraska making decisions on the money with their money going to athletes.
So you would say that the head coach, in this case DBK, will be more involved.
And I asked Troy Dannon that, I go, how do you handle rev share for volleyball? And he goes, we don't really know all the way yet, but whatever it is, we're going to be the top. So whatever the market is, we're going to make sure we're the top of the market.
It's interesting.
But like, what will because a place like Texas can say, but Texas has to take care of a lot of other sports.
You know what I think is going to be the key to all this with her success here, especially in this new era of rev share and NIL, is the talent will never be an issue at Nebraska. But what made John Cook so good was the ability to manage all of that with the players on the court and all the things they had going on, the egos involved with all that. He made it work. He had all these stars come to Lincoln, Nebraska, and he made them into a well-oiled machine.
No doubt.
Can Danny handle that? I think that's going to be probably the most telling point, because talent will be an issue. Money won't be an issue. She's going to have the best coaching staff around her. Can she manage all of that star power to the level that John Cook did?
Like Cook getting Lindsey Krause to accept a bench role.
No doubt.
She was a key hitter a year or two before.
Yeah, there are no guarantees. I mean, it drives me crazy. I don't want to take the conversation in two different directions, but when people say Phil Jackson, well, he had all the talent in the world. Of course he won. No. You can screw that up too. And it's still, you still have to coach at a super high level. It's just a different way.
All right.
And with Danny, this is going to be a different group for her, right? Because they're basically all 5 stars that she's got. But when she was at Louisville, her first few classes, she had to take players with a lot of potential. And she turned a few of them into All-Americans. Louisville had their first 2 first-team All-Americans under Danny. But this is just going to be a very different vibe for her, because she has had to take, good players and turn them into being great. But now she's inheriting 14 great players.
Abby, you should cover volleyball. You seem to know what you're talking about.
When we come back, Abby will stay with us, and we'll take your questions in the mailbag. You're listening here to the HuskerOnline Show. We're back here on the HuskerOnline Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washington, Abby Barmore joining us here for another segment. Let's get into the mailbag. Abby, where are we going first?
How would you grade Nebraska's portal class?
I mean, it's got to be close to an A. I think they went light on the D line by maybe one big body. And I think you can obviously make a case for a running back until we know what they have at running back. I'll say A-.
One way to answer this is that they are I mean, there's been rankings of the portal classes, national and Big Ten, and Nebraska's number 1 in the Big Ten. I saw the top 10 nationally, 15 commits. It's a little hard to answer. Here's what I mean. I'd like to see how Winery, how that looks.
That's a big
McCullough.
McCullough, how's that look? How's that
Watson Trent?
How's that look? But on the surface,
Pritchett.
How's that all look? But based on, there's like Watson Trent, you can judge it a little bit. He's been very productive. Winery, you can't really judge it. He didn't play at Missouri. I don't know how that's going to look. Pritchett, you're counting on him to be better. You're counting on him to
get coached up
and be better. So some of it is an unknown, but God, it's really exciting what they've done.
Yeah, from potential standpoint, I think it's an A. But like you said, it's just you can't grade it right now because
that's hard.
Everything looks great on paper, but so did last year's receiving class, and we all know how that ended up. So,
good point.
Did they get a starter in the secondary? Still an unknown between Andrew Marshall, Jameer Khan, and then Justin Redd. Is one of those 3 guys starting level?
Yeah.
That's another question we don't know. But next question, what do you got?
Okay, of all the new assistants, who have the toughest job ahead of them?
Oh God, Abby, maybe
Terry Braden.
Oh, okay. Or Addison Williams, I think.
Well, he's got all the starters back though.
Yeah, but they struggled. The secondary was a tough spot. It didn't have a great year. Didn't. But no, I think it's probably Braden, but I would close behind say Addison Williams.
Well, you just said Nwari, how critical of a piece he is. Well, whose job is that to get him going?
Right.
And he's not even here yet. I mean, that's the other part of it too. Like he's going to have some ground to catch up just from a relationship standpoint, getting to know these guys, getting to trust them, getting a
no doubt
in-person evaluation of who they are as players and people. So, I mean, he's got a lot of work ahead of him to do as soon as this Kansas City run ends.
I wonder if he started that process.
I would hope so.
Yeah, you can do both.
To be fair, though, January is recruiting. Like you're not around anyway, and the coaches are on vacation right now. So the mat drill, he'll be here for the mat drills, and that's when the real
good point.
Getting your hands dirty begins.
But he's got the biggest shoes on the entire team to fill with Nash and Ty. So,
and Jamari Butler.
Get to work. Yep.
Next question.
Okay. So you guys talked about this a little bit last week, but who is the fourth coach on Nebraska's Mount Rushmore? Tom Osborne, Bob Devaney, John Cook. Who's number 4?
And who's 4? That's now
Gary Pepin.
Yeah, Pepin be in there.
Pepin be in there.
Bill Stroh.
I would think Van Horn would be.
He's College World Series.
He's the one I go to because I think when I think of the best coaches I've covered, he's number 4. It's those 3. If I didn't cover Devaney, I kind of covered Devaney. He was the AD when I started, believe it or not. He was. I was a young guy and interviewed him.
Is that when you worked with Cy Sherman?
But anyway, Francis Allen has to be in that discussion. Francis Allen, Van Horn, and Pepin. And who are we missing? Anybody?
Bill Stroop. He
Bill
won
Straub
10 national,
is the name.
10 national championships.
Bowling. Bowling. Yeah.
I just have a hard time putting bowling on the level because it's not like a high-profile TV sport.
Same. And I kind of have that same issue with track too. Like I know track's like it's I've covered it. Like I know all about it and just like all the athleticism and stuff that goes into that. But like baseball is just a bigger spotlight here. And so that's where I would give the edge to Van Horn in that conversation.
I'm going DVH.
Yeah.
I'm going DVH.
And Francis Allen, I think you'd make the case for like the 80s when they had the run of Olympians. I mean, literally like
and national titles
and multiple gold medalists.
Yeah, I don't have the number of national titles off the top of my head for France's team titles, but it's a big number. The thing, I go back to DVH because he whipped around the program fast. He whipped around a baseball program that was mired in mediocrity. It really was under John Sanders. I loved John. I did. He was a friend, but the program had kind of just flattened out. And man, it didn't take long for Van Horn to take it to places where you almost couldn't imagine.
National contender.
Yeah.
In 20 some years, we're still like holding on to that era.
Right. 100.
Like that's what fills that ballpark up are people that tasted that era and enjoyed it so much that they won't let it go.
Great point. That's a good way to put it. Really good way to put it. It was an amazing period.
It was
an amazing period.
I had this buddy, Josh, and he's the biggest baseball Nebraska fan he'd ever been. And he would make a joke. He got a Jeep with the top off. And he goes, I got this Jeep for basically 3 weekends when we host regionals, super regionals, and the College World Series.
Amazing.
So I can drive into Haymarket with the top off and tailgate. And I mean, people like love that era. It was an
incredible era.
Like that Miami. But that was not Dave Van Horn. That was
Anderson.
That Miami like baseball series.
Yeah. It was Jabba and Alex Gordon. I mean, it was amazing.
They let like 13,000 people in. I mean, they had to like fire code it, but they just let anybody in that bought a GA. And it was just like shoulder to shoulder.
A lot of trips to Oklahoma City for the Big 12. Me and Robin went down there. Me and Robin would cover games down there. And the Big 12 tournament was a huge deal. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Not Terry, but Terry Pettit, though, I think still would.
Oh, Pettit.
If you want to compare resumes, look out.
Not a bad
Olympians.
Thank God you caught that.
Yeah.
Abby.
I was thinking about it,
caught that.
but I mean, he won 1 national title.
Well, DVH never won one, but I mean, here's the thing. Thank God you caught that because Pettit is in that discussion for sure.
Like he set the tone.
Yeah, he did. He won the national title in 1995, and he pushed the program.
He was volleyball's Devaney, and Cook is the Osborne.
Yes,
100.
correct.
All right, let's see. Final question.
Okay, the Super Bowl's on Sunday. Go Chiefs!
Woo!
But my question is, what is your favorite Super Bowl or game day snack?
Wings.
Yeah.
I mean,
correct.
I mean, I like to char them up and grill them up, and if I have time, use the Traeger. But I'm a wings guy. We sometimes we'll make like a bunch of steak. I have a flat top grill, make a bunch of steak tacos, slice up the steak, marinate it, get pepper.
There's all those girls you got like that?
Yeah.
Do they like steak taco?
They don't eat wings though. That's a problem.
They'll get there.
You got to cut the meat off.
Yeah. I found this recipe for a buffalo chicken dip. It's so good. It's like spicy, but it's got the chicken and the cream cheese. It's fire. And then anything just like smoked meat. So like give me some ribs, give me a brisket, wings, anything like that. Anything that is a long cook on the smoker. So like you get up in the morning, just let it go all day, even the night before sometimes. Just let it roll all day. And then by kickoff, you're off and running.
Yeah, shrimp cocktails, what I've gone to before.
You have shrimp cocktail at your house
Yes.
for the Super Bowl.
I have. Trix used to make it all the time. I loved it. I don't like to eat heavy during that type of in that setting. Just ruins the experience.
It'd be fun. I would love just you to take a picture of what's inside your fridge and share it for the airwaves.
Oh, it'd be interesting
and
right
we'd
now.
have a hell of a segment.
No, I wouldn't even want to comment on it right now. It's interesting.
Like an old jar
I
of
did
pickles.
consider it. I considered it over the week. I'm like, oh my God, this is really bad. But whatever. Is what it is.
I envision like you don't have a bed. Do you have a bedside? I envision like your clock on the ground.
I have
Gosh.
like Larry Eustace. Larry Eustace had a big house. It's not a bad vision.
just a mattress on the floor.
It's not a bad vision.
Like McNulty in The Wire.
No, Larry Eustace.
No sheets, just a comforter.
Larry Eustace had a huge house at Southern Miss, and one of those coaches that knew him said all he had in his house, this huge mansion, was a thing you run on. What do you call it?
A treadmill.
Treadmill. That's all he had. A bed and a treadmill.
Mhm.
That's what he had.
Empty rooms.
Yeah, just empty rooms.
Just like a computer chair with a TV on a cardboard
Bed and a
box.
treadmill.
Yeah.
Perfect.
What more do you need?
All right. Abby,
my
what's your
gosh.
go-to?
Hello.
I love hot wings and I love all the dips, buffalo chicken dip.
You do.
Cheese
you love
dip.
them.
Yep.
Great. I love dips.
God, you guys are
Dips.
way more foodies than I am.
Dips.
You know that, right?
I like the grazing food.
Sean, you know
Yeah.
that. I don't.
like wings, you can just like grab a wing and just eat it throughout the day. You don't have to like
Mhm.
stuff your face with an entire meal.
You
I
can
weigh-
eat wings forever too. Like
Yeah.
it's dangerous.
It's a marathon.
I weigh
food.
170. I have like one meal a day. That's what I have. I mean, that's all I need. So I don't do a lot of grazing.
Well, just save up and have your one meal during the game.
No, ideally I'll be home for the Super Bowl to watch that. I mean, I almost don't like to go to parties.
Oh, come on.
No, there's a if
you are a walking
Bill Burr, the
party.
comedian, has a hilarious bit on that about how everybody's just yapping. Like they're quiet during the commercials and they talk about the commercials during the actual
Couldn't
game.
do it.
It's like
Like,
third
Yeah,
and
I
8.
totally
it's in
agree.
10.
Super
couldn't
Bowl
do
parties are for people that don't care about football.
yeah, I wouldn't do it.
And some guy's telling you about his kid's high school play. And you're like, I'm watching the freaking game.
I need to.
I don't care about your fantasy football team. I'm watching this game.
I need $1,000 to go to a Super Bowl party. I
Yep.
need 1,000.
I'll do like very small gatherings
Your
with
wives
people
are,
that
like,
also care
planning
about
out
football.
vacations and like other wives. Like,
Mhm.
we should plan a trip to So the
Oh,
Super Bowl
God.
party just set me off $10,000 for a vacation to Disney.
This is great. This is great.
We'll get together and like, no, I want to watch the game. This is like 3rd and 8, huge play. I don't
like
care.
This. I like this part of Sean. I'm surprised though. I thought you'd be super party central.
Well, with the Chiefs, if I was watching like the Cardinals Steelers Super Bowl, I a little bit more relaxed. But Chiefs game, come on.
Yeah.
Not
You
messing
gotta lock in.
around. Serious
need you,
business.
Sean.
Cardinals,
They need your help.
Steelers.
I think that was a Super Bowl.
It was.
Yeah, it was.
It was a Kurt
It was
Warner.
a good one.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right. When we come back, we'll close the show with Husker basketball. You're
That
listening to the Husker Online
That
Show.
got hot.
Final segment of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, Nebraska basketball talk. And just when you thought we were out, they pulled us back in, Robin. They pulled us back in.
Mhm.
And, Sipple warned us. He's like, don't count these guys out.
Don't count them out.
After you got burned a year ago, kind of counting Fred out, and then they went on these big runs.
Did I get burned last year?
Well, you were kind of
I think it was 2 years ago.
I think they had your face in the locker room and they would just throw darts at it after every win.
I prefer more
Very
the major league
handsome
scene.
face.
The major league scene where they rip off strips
Nobody wanted that.
of Sipple and a Speedo.
Very handsome. All right, Rob,
You're
take
right.
it
though.
away.
It shows you how wildly a season can swing. Where 12-2 start, we're talking about, can this team be a 7 seed, a 6 seed? Like how far can they take this thing? Then they lose 6 straight.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, is Fred Hoiberg going to get fired? Like, that was the conversation around some of the fan base. And so, like, the emotional roller coaster is now back on the uptick, where they beat 2 straight top 20 teams with Illinois and then at Oregon, and now are firmly back on the bubble, and they're on the right side of the bubble. And things are starting to swing back to where they were earlier in the season, both with their record and their resume, but with the way that they're playing. You're starting to see that same team that got them to 12-2, that went out and beat Creighton and Omaha. Like that group has kind of reemerged over these last 2. And with that, there's some renewed optimism now, to where what once seemed like another epic Nebraska basketball season collapse is alive. And it's going to be game to game. They have very little wiggle room the rest of the way, but at least they are entering February now in control of their own destiny. And that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing, and you don't do it as fans, and I don't really expect fans to do it. I kind of would be more hopeful that media would do it, is don't get on that roller coaster. Just stay off the roller coaster. You don't have to get on it. But 6 in a row was rough. I mean, 6 in a row doesn't happen much. It's going to happen to Oregon, though, it looks like. They've lost 3 in a row. Now they play Michigan State. Yep. They'll go through it. Doesn't mean their season's done. You can pull out of it. And that's what you were wondering, if Nebraska could pull out of it. And they barely did. I mean, that Illinois game was overtime.
Yeah, they just almost lost by 30 at Wisconsin. It's like, what gave you any semblance that they were going to pull together?
No,
that suddenly things were going to get fixed.
I always say that's basketball, though. I mean, I used to watch NBA finals where a team would lose by 30 and win the next game, and the LA Lakers Boston series. You'd be like, wow, how's this happen? Well, it does. It just happens. But it did look bleak.
Teams are making their shots on Nebraska too. Now they're not.
Well, they're guarding a little bit.
There's a reason. I mean, they're not getting wide open looks, and they're getting contested, and they're forcing more misses, where that was not happening in those previous games during that 6-game losing streak. The defense was not there. And you want to talk about getting back to where they were earlier in the season. It starts with defense. Yes, Bryce Williams has been, one of the best players in the Big Ten, even the country, over these last 2. Juwan Gary's getting back to his kind of attack mode mentality that makes him so much better than when he's settling for contested threes. But defensively, they're locking in again. And that's going to be the number one X factor for this team the rest of the way, is if they defend at the level they did against Illinois and against Oregon, and going back even to the UCLA game, they can compete with and beat anybody that's left on their schedule.
Sean, what did your coach at Omaha Gross used to tell you about defense? It's something you can control all the time. That's a controllable. You can always play good defense.
Effort.
Shots don't always fall. You're going to miss 3-pointers. It's kind of a crapshoot.
And you just see what the difference is when you close out with intent, when you rotate on the perimeter and actually get a hand up in a shot. Like, those things weren't happening, and they let the frustration of the losses, of their offensive struggles, get to them, to where they were not giving that same level of effort. And this team just is not good enough to overcome not playing with elite level defense. And that's a fine line to walk, because it comes down to you. Like, are you going to bring it every single night? And they did not for an extended stretch. But when they do, you see what that picture can look like and how good this team can be in the Big Ten.
Robin, what Bryce has done is when teams kind of sag off and leave the middle open, that he's just going in and dunking it.
Yeah, he's attacking the rim. Juwan Gary's attacking the rim. That the 3-point shooting continues to struggle. Like, they're just not a good 3-point shooting team. And that is probably one of your bigger concerns about, especially if they do get to the tournament, being able to make a run. But they're able to overcome that by just being the aggressor, and they're getting to the rim. And even when they're missing layups, they're getting to the free throw line. And that's the formula offensively for this team. And what I also like is, even if Bryce isn't getting to the rim, that mid-range game that he's kind of adapting, I'm curious when they get back from this West Coast trip. I want to ask Fred about how he feels about this evolution of Bryce Williams' mid-range jump shot, because there's probably not a coach in the Big Ten, maybe college basketball, that going into this year despised mid-range jump shots more than Fred Hoiberg.
I wonder,
so to him to embrace that and play to Bryce's strengths, let his best player do one of the things that he's best at, and you see the results. It gets him going. He's able to get good, comfortable shots, sees the ball goes in. Then all of a sudden the confidence builds, and he's on attack mode, and he's taking it to the rim and not, kind of settling for the contested shots that got him into trouble earlier in the month.
I just wonder sometimes if defenses are even surprised he's taking mid-ranges.
Might be.
Basketball's become you're either at the rim or you're shooting a 3. And here's this guy who excels in the mid-range. And by the way, he is a sniper. I mean, He's an incredible player to watch on offense. He's a good defender too.
There are
by the
many
way.
Big Ten people that say he's the best scorer, pure scorer in the conference.
The word is pure, Sean.
Would he
He's
get the
pure.
support though, Robin? You think for first team, or will the politics of the NBA guys in the league overpower him?
They got to win
Wait a
more.
second.
They got to
Isn't
win
he
more.
an NBA guy?
He's being scouted.
High draft pick guys.
Probably not high.
I don't know if he's a first round guy, but
I gotta think he can. I
could
watch
see him
NBA.
sneaking in the second round.
Robin, I watch NBA. There's really no. This is where my NBA expertise comes in handy. There's no doubt in my mind he can play in the NBA. There's zero doubt.
He's a 6'7" ball handler
Right.
who can shoot.
Right,
He'll be
he
an
can play.
overseas
He can
player,
defend too.
if not for years. He'll play a lot over. If he doesn't make the NBA, he'll make a lot of money.
Worst
overseas.
case.
Now I'll watch that really close. I just don't understand why he wouldn't be able to play in the NBA. Somebody'd have to.
Well, he doesn't have the dynamic athleticism. I mean, he's got length and he's got the mental part of it, but he's just not like a head above the rim type guy.
Not everybody is that.
I know,
in
but
the
like
NBA.
that's what if you're going to knock him, why he's not a prospect? Like,
You look at Jalen Brunson, for instance. He's not a head above the rim guy. He scored 42 the other night. I mean, you can do it. I'd be shocked if he. I'll say this. I'll be really surprised if he doesn't play in the NBA.
Well, with the all Big Ten conversation, Sean, going back to that, like I think has every opportunity because he's getting the attention around the league
From the coaches.
from the media personalities. Like he's the fourth leading scorer in the Big Ten, and people are calling him the best pure scorer in the conference. Like that's going to carry weight before and after every Nebraska games. People are talking about Bryce being one of the, if not the best scorer in the league. Like scoring is what you look at first and foremost when it comes to all conference selections. So he's going to have competition, and a lot of it is going to come down to winning. Just like with football, the teams like the Michigan State's going to get a lot of guys, whereas
Purdue,
Washington's not going to get anybody. So like that part of it too. If Nebraska is relevant and they're in tournament conversation by the end of the year, I think he'll have a chance. He will certainly have a chance to make first team.
Sean, I want Robin in late February to have this kind of tone, not a beaten down Robin. I want this Robin, a hopeful Robin, getting ready to go back on the road for the NCAA tournament. We are going back on the road.
Maybe I'll join you guys and
That'd be fun.
We'll do shows.
Let's do it.
Sean, come on.
Let's go all in. I think that
Sean,
was the
come
missing
on.
element last year. We didn't have you.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll see.
Come on.
We'll see. I would love that.
Bring Abby.
All right. Fun show. Plenty of coverage of Nebraska basketball and obviously everything recruiting. Check us out at HuskerOnline.com.